again, everybody, and welcome to the special Wrestlemania weekend edition of the Jim Cornette Experience. And today on the Cultcast, we give you an in-depth analysis of as much as I could possibly watch, including the longest wrestling show in recorded history, WrestleMania itself. And now here's the guy, with no further ado, whose fault this all is, that there has been hours and hours and hours of my life that have been tied up in this research for this special program over the last few days. My co-host, Mr. Co-host, Hawaiian Brian, the podcast line, King of the Arcade and Vanguard Network, the guy who made me watch more wrestling in 2 days than I have in the past 2 years. Here he is, Brian Last.
Aloha, Jim. I want to remind you I screwed myself in this process as well.
Yeah.
Because I had to watch this crap also. And it wasn't all crap. But you know
and you've got a no, we're not going to shit all over everything now. Don't let people think that. There's good and bad that we're going to be talking about, but just the lengthy consummation of the time. My time was consummated is what it was over the week. And you've got a baby and a dog and well, I guess the wife isn't really too much trouble. You don't have to change her as much as the baby, but you've got all kinds of other stuff going on, whereas I have a peaceful, semi-retired life here at Castle Cornette, but you had to watch much of this programming also.
I actually ended up watching it with I can now say my two oldest kids now that we have the baby, and it was actually an interesting experience watching it with them because the things that are better on the show, they usually like, and the things that are silly, they're the first ones to point out, how come that hurt that guy and not the other guy? Like, they're right away, they're on it.
Well, we will be speaking of all those things, but at the top of the program, and this came out late last week or right at the top of the weekend, the news that Luscious Johnny Valiant had been hit and killed actually by a car crossing the road near Pittsburgh, where he has been living for forever. He's originally from there. And so that was, but we didn't really get a chance to talk about it on the previous programs because we were pre-taped and et cetera, and we wanted to wait until the experience would reach everybody. But I've obviously have been closer to Jimmy Valiant than Johnny over the years because Jimmy was here so long and I've known him and worked with him so many times. But Johnny, actually, I got to see, and I was telling you this right before we went on the air, as they say, I got to see the very first run of the Valiant Brothers as the Valiant Brothers in Indianapolis when they came in 73 for Bruiser. Handsome Jimmy had been there for a while, and Bobby Heenan managed him and Baron von Raschke and the Blackjacks when I first started watching the program like a year and a half earlier or whatever. But then the Valiant Brothers come in. Johnny had been John L. Sullivan and had worked under a few previous names, and he was from the Pittsburgh area, but he finally got a break, and that was perfect. The Valiant Brothers were the classic bleach blonde heel wrestling tag team of the 70s, I think, to be quite honest. Are you arguing with me or ignoring me?
No, I mean, I'm trying to think. There were so many great blonde tag teams in the 50s and the 60s. They may be the last great one, the one from the 70s, yeah.
Yeah, because they were kind of old-fashioned and at the same time, and I mean, now people, if Wayne Ferris hears this, he'll say, what about me and Larry, the Blonde Bombers? Or what? There were, and obviously the other Blonde Bombers, Patterson and Stevens. But with Patterson and Stevens, I'm not even talking about a bleach blonde team. They were a great tag team. Two guys happened to be bleach blonde at that point. The Valiant Brothers being the bleach blonde team, they were the modern day evolution in the 70s when it was modern of those classic old 50s heel glamour boy tag teams. And Handsome's promo, because Johnny was the brother. He was, as I told Horner one time, if this was a movie, you'd be the best friend. In that team, Handsome was the star, but Johnny was a great stooge brother. And I don't mean that as a derogatory. Now, it worked because Jimmy had already been in the territory. So when he brings Luscious Johnny in, he said, And this was before Jimmy was the raging, screaming, boogie-woogie man that just made no sense, man, just at the top of his lungs and the beard down to his nuts in the 80s for Crockett. He still didn't have a beard. He was clean-shaven. He had the slick, bleach blonde hair back down halfway down his shoulders. He was wearing the gold lame jackets with the star and the big apple on the back and shit, right? This was glamour boy, handsome Jimmy Valiant. That's where the handsome came from. And he was more subdued, but he'd do the promo with Sam Miniker. He'd say, you know, Sam Miniker, handsome Jimmy is from the Big Apple, New York City, daddy. And handsome Jimmy is the idol of the women, brother. And handsome Jimmy, mama, has all these sexy muscles, baby daddy. And now I have brought Sam Miniker. I have brought my brother from the Big Apple. I've gone all the way to the Big Apple, daddy, and got my brother, mama. And his luscious Johnny baby daddy. and I mean shit, and it was like the only thing that we are brothers, we are the same, we are identical. The only difference between us is I'm not luscious, I'm just handsome, and he's not handsome, he's just luscious. Otherwise than that, we are completely identically the same, daddy. Mama Boogie. Yeah, and they had the sunglasses and with Lou Albano, they were perfect in New York, right? When they finally did go to New York. But meanwhile, Jimmy was born in fucking Tennessee and grew up mostly around Chicago, Hammond, Indiana. And Johnny is from Pittsburgh, so neither one had the New York accent. But for the people in Indianapolis, they thought, well, that's how those fucking people in New York talk. But it was great, and Jimmy was flamboyant, but Johnny hung with him in the ring, and they took the big bumps, and they backed up and stooged off and were chicken shit heels and did the glamour boy stuff, and it was and with Heenan, you know, and it was good. So the first program, actually, well, I don't know about the first program, but the big program, they came in, established themselves as heels. Guess who was the tag team champions at the time in summer-ish 1973 in Indiana?
Indiana babyface tag team summer 73.
The champions.
It couldn't have been Bruiser and Snyder at that point. I don't know.
You're half right. Dick the Bruiser and Bruno Sammartino.
Oh shit, yeah.
Because Bruno had dropped the belt by request. He didn't want to schedule anymore, and he'd semi-retired 71, 72, and then he started doing shots again for just people that he respected, which I think were few. It was basically Bruiser at that point. In Indianapolis, he was flying in for the big shows. And so I think they beat Ladd and Von Raschke possibly for the belts. But then the Valiants established themselves as the heel team. And then when finally Vince Sr. talks Bruno into coming back to be the champion in December, he was still the tag team champions with Bruiser. So in January and I think first part of February, Bruno finished up by coming back in to drop. So Bruiser and Bruno dropped the belts to the Valiant brothers in Indianapolis. And I would assume, I don't know, and we got to find out. Maybe we're going to have Dave Grayson on the program soon. He might not know since it was Indianapolis and not Detroit, but I wonder who did the job. But as a result, the Valiant brothers got over like God in Indianapolis, and it was fucking, and the promos were great, and the matches, they just flew for the heels and then did their shit, and they bled. And they got over so good, they came back and had a run again in 77, 78. Which is how Jimmy got the spot in Memphis, because he asked Bruiser for a heel for his title tournament just to come in and make a shot. And Valiant Jimmy got over so well with the people in Memphis that Jarrett switched it, put the belt on him, and got more dates on him. And they would do deals where they'd bring in his brother Johnny against, I think, Dundee and Lawler one time, or Luscious Johnny when Handsome Jimmy wrestled Lawler. Luscious Johnny would be the masked New York referee, and that would be revealed. And people knew because they'd been in all the magazines. So I know a lot of people think of Johnny Valiant as the 80s manager, and he had the gift of gab and was a good talker, et cetera, but I remember Handsome Jimmy and Luscious Johnny and the Valiant brothers. They were my first favorite real heel tag team, and there was definitely a lot of Valiant brothers promos being cut around here at the house in 74, 73.
I feel like their behavior was influential, and like if you ever see anyone, like I remember Fridays, you know, the show that was on ABC with Michael Richards and Larry David, they had a skit Maybe it was the Golden Boys or the Golden Brothers. I forget.
Yeah.
And it was basically the Valiant brothers. It was, because it wasn't just the bleach blonde hair. There were certain things they did that other people picked up on and started doing, like the putting their hands on your hips and just kind of looking to the sky while the guy's talking to you.
The mannerisms, in the ring and out, the mannerisms, the poochie pout on the promo, baby, and the nodding of the head and the strut. They took the strut to more of a fucking, duck walk. I don't fucking know what they were doing, but it was just the heel cockiness of that era was the Valiant brothers took what had come before and advanced a lot of it, and that was when a lot of the influential next generation of TV performers were growing up in the major markets watching wrestling. So it kind of, what's the word I'm searching for? It transferred over, transmogrified. It was absorbed in all of that.
When I was a kid, I only knew Johnny Valiant as Johnny V, the manager in the WWF. And I would watch his promos, and I was pretty hip. I was into comedy at a young age. And I remember thinking, wow, his stuff must be so advanced that I'll only get it when I grow up. Yeah. I have no idea what he's saying. And now, as an adult with a fully formed mind, I go back and I watch some of his stuff. I still have no idea.
You don't get it, yeah.
No, it's this super psycho gibberish that he would say. Like, there's the one promo that I love with Wrestlemania 3. It's him and the Dream Team and Dino Bravo. And I guess because Dino Bravo's French, he says, "Parlez-vous scrambled eggs, Grandma?" And I'm like, what? It's just the whole promo. Yeah, it's just him talking gibberish.
The thing is, it worked for the Valiant brothers, but I don't know that it worked for Johnny V as a manager. Because that was the thing. I think part of the idea with the Valiant brothers was everybody thought these fucking wacko fucking bleach blonde fucking lunatics are all whacked out also on some kind of heavy drugs from New York City. And they were supposed to not make any sense in a kind of cool way. But once it only worked, for some reason, it only worked either for Jimmy as a single or the team as a team. It didn't necessarily translate. Johnny just sounded like he's nuts.
Well, that's the thing, too, I guess. The big thing is that there really was a chemistry with the two of them. Because even though Jimmy kept up and obviously got more manic with that persona, them together is really the best stuff with Johnny in terms of his personality shining, because it's them, their interplay. It's them playing off each other.
Yeah, it was a great team. But anyway, so I have no idea. He and someone else, correct? Was his wife? Did you read this? Did you hear about this? We're crossing the road, but apparently before dawn, a busy road. I didn't know roads were busy before dawn, or why they came to be crossing it, or how the person hit them. But more details to come. But it's a shame, because once again, more of my childhood, the Valiant brothers. Fuck, it was a big. When they finally came down here, I got to see them in person. That was a big fucking deal. And Jimmy had already been here, but it was just the idea of both of them together. That was a big time team at that point. So there you go. And stories like this and many others, hopefully some of them even entertaining, will be featured in my new graphic novel / comic book from IDW Publishing that we've been talking about. And we are being heard now for the first time on Thursday, April 13th. Is that the case? What day is it? 12th?
Yes.
Thursday, April 12th is when you're hearing this for the first time. And the Kickstarter goes live on Tuesday, April 17th for Jim Cornette Presents Behind the Curtain Real Pro Wrestling Stories. And we've been talking about it the past few weeks. IDW Publishing is teaming me up with Brandon Easton and Dennis Medry to put the same team that did the Andre the Giant Closer to Heaven graphic novel. And this thing is slicker than cum on a gold tooth, as they say. And I'm getting the same treatment now. With the heavy stock paper and the color and the slickness, but it's going to be all the classic behind the scenes pro wrestling stories of sometimes the lengths and the breadths that these guys, the classic stars, would go to, and some of the current ones, to protect the illusions behind their art. And you can actually get part of the art. The Kickstarter perks include not only emails and phone call updates from me and signed art and stuff and books, signed books. You can be a character in one of the stories. But people have been sending in suggestions because we're going to try to do, the bigger the Kickstarter is, the more extra features we do. And whether it be a Where Are They Now or some interviews with me about the making of the book or behind the scenes stories or the old time wrestling magazine / comic book style mock-ups of the ads and the posters and a lot of people are suggesting those. So we're trying to make it cool as we can. Anyway, apparently you can go to idwlimited.com and sign up for their newsletter. And as soon as the Kickstarter goes live, it will tell you and give you the details, or you can follow them at IDW Publishing on Twitter, or we will have a tiny URL next week, but then don't be left out. Jump in at the start because somebody is gonna buy up all these placements we're putting the some of the Kickstarter donators in. Include I want to see who gets to be the pilot who crashes Flair's plane. But I also think that we ought to have somebody, an old Memphis wrestling fan, be the hitchhiker that the Fabulous Fargos torment late at night in nowhere, Alabama. I think that would be a great spot also. Anyway, and Brian, I know you want to be, obviously, you want to be you'd probably like to be Earl Hebner in the Montreal Screwjob, wouldn't you? You'd just to take it away from John Fell.
I would never, ever want to be Earl Hebner in any situation whatsoever.
No, baby Earl's nice. We love the Hebners here at the house.
The only Earl I like is Tiny Earl. TinyURL.com.
Oh, all right. Well, at first I thought it was 10 Earl. Anyway, we'll keep you updated, folks. But Behind the Curtain be a landmark event for moi. And I'm suggesting more stuff that the people can get. So we're still developing all of that as we speak. I can't give the latest idea because the artist may revolt if we talk about that much custom work. But anyway, I have an update from the Cult of Cornette, one of our statisticians out there in the accounting office. We talked about Batista and his career length the other day, I think, on the drive-thru. If you're not listening to the drive-thru, why the fuck wouldn't they be, by the way? Because all these questions get answered every week on the drive-thru from you, the Cult of Cornette, and if you're not listening, then you're not caught up.
Yeah.
Why would they not listen?
I have no idea. Makes no sense.
Don't get me fucking riled up here. But anyway, on the drive-thru, subject of Batista came up, and basically, my original evaluation of Dave Batista when he arrived here in Ohio Valley Wrestling was that we need to give this guy a gimmick and get him over because of his appearance in a manner in which he can work on pay-per-view and in top programs with guys like Big Show, Kane, and The Undertaker, maybe one or two others that might fit that general area, because he's already in his 30s. It seems to be injury prone. He is not a natural worker and did not grow up as a fan. Therefore, he's not going to be taking arm drags in the second match the way he looks. We need to give him some type of gimmick because he's going to have about a 5-year stretch probably when he gets to the top, on top against these guys. And so that's what we need to prepare for. That was my evaluation. And I said, I wonder when you take injuries out of it, how long his career actually was once he left OVW and the rest of the WWE. And one of our statisticians says his career, and now I have not fact-checked these facts, and if anybody wants to dispute them, it's not like if we're even in the neighborhood here, I don't really give a fuck. And I'm not going to take my time, but if somebody wants to dispute them, I'll read disputes later. But this guy says he had an 84-month career in the WWE and spent 26 of them injured, which means that leaves 58 months or 4 years and 10 months. So I was wrong. He did not have a 5-year run, or was not destined for about a 5-year run. It was 4 years and 10 months from my original evaluation in Louisville when I first saw him. So I apologize for that error.
Who are you apologizing to?
I have no idea.
You were right. I was surprised. I actually thought after you said that, I'm like, there's no way he had only 5 years without injuries. And it turns out you were right. I thought you were wrong on that.
4 years and 10 months. That's this feller's accounting, and I'll be willing to revisit it if anybody else wants to do the work. But if you would like to see Batista's original gimmick, If you would like to know my vision for Batista, Leviathan, the Demon of the Deep, then you can actually see him in the only OVW commercial release ever presented or released, Wrestling's Future Stars, along with the only commercial Smoky Mountain Wrestling releases, along with the Wrestling Gold 5-disc 10-hour set. All of those, the warehouse find on sale at jimcornette.com at Cornette's Collectibles for only $10 a piece. So the Wrestling Gold, that's $10 for 10 hours, for fuck's sake. And it's in a case you can set on your shelf and it won't even tip over. So there you go. But you can also see the early years of OVW on the Wrestling's Future Stars release and see if you like Leviathan better than Batista. It may be that may be an interesting poll, because Leviathan was over as fuck when we could keep him focused. Anyway, otherwise than that, get all your merchandise at jimcornette.com. Read some of my past Fighting Spirit magazine columns absolutely free. Peruse many fine pictures and other type of entertainment. And you can also go to YouTube, corny YouTube, directly when you click on the YouTube button, because Brian kept whining when it was harder to do, so we made it simple there. And otherwise, Whining Brian, what the fuck? Yeah, I've been whining once again. I've got these stacks of paper here, like a goddamn book report that I've been doing. I'm back in school now from this show. Well, all right, let's talk about last weekend. But what are you doing over in the on the 605 side these days?
Real quick, everyone. This week on Ron Fuller Studcast, we get into the Snake Pit. We talk all about Eddie Graham, the positives of Eddie Graham, and quite frankly, the real negatives of Eddie Graham and some of the things that happened in the Snake Pit. This is the first of a multi-episode series about the Snake Pit. Check that out at fullerpod.com or anywhere you find your favorite podcast, Ron Fuller's Studcast. This week on Breaking Kayfabe with Baldwin and Barry, Scott McGee joins the show to talk about his career, especially his career in Florida, and the boys talk about some matches from the 1980s at baldwinpod.com or wherever you find your favorite podcast. This week on Kentucky Fried Wrestling, Scott Bowden's going to take a look at ICW, not necessarily Memphis Wrestling, but Memphis Wrestling's outlaw competitor who did everything they could to drive Jarrett, Lawler, Tojo, and everyone else out of their minds. This week at KFRpod.com or wherever you find your favorite podcast, and the 605 Super Podcast, The Mothership.
Good Lord.
I want to say that actually we're going to take a week off because Last Manor.
After all that, you heard all that.
Last Manor and the offices of Arcadian Vanguard are moving this week into a much, much bigger location. So until the move's over, I'm not going to be able to edit that show. So that'll be coming at you probably next week. I would assume mid next week, but nothing new this week from the Super Podcast.
It could be mid next week. It could be late next week, but it'll be there next week.
The Mothership. And of course,
the Mothership
shirts, Mothership shirts available at tinyurl.com/superpod store.
You know, I've been thinking about making a new shirt. What about if I make a shirt, a red shirt with big letters that says MAGA? My attorney got arrested. You think would that might be a shirt? I don't know. Somebody, if you want to beat me to it, I don't know.
Have you seen this guy real quick? I know we're not going to really go into politics or anything this week, but have you seen this guy, Michael Cohen, like not just still frames, but when he talks and he's all mush mouthed, Mr. Trump, I'm his right hand man.
It's at some point, it's almost like if Dennis Corluzzo had gone to law school.
That's exactly what it's like, yeah.
Because you can tell this guy is obviously he's a flim-flam man that has a law degree that's worked for years for a bigger flim-flam man, that he's probably bailed out of a bunch of shit and been taken care of in who knows what kind of or how many ways. But he's not none of the reputable, what they call them, white shoe law firms in the world, much less in this country, want to be involved in Donald Trump's legal defense because of not only his fucking liability and his culpability and his habit of not paying his attorneys, except apparently for Michael Cohen, and just the fact that he's uncontrollable and he's unwinnable in any case. They won't deal with him, so of course he's left with this fucking. He's the fucking Classy Motors used car salesman equivalent of attorneys. And that's what you get when you're a fucking a crook, a real estate fraud that becomes a fucking brand seller of their name, that becomes a reality TV star that somehow cons people into making him the president. Well, people and Russia and Facebook and fucking all the perfect storm of things. And that's the kind of legal representation you got. Did you expect Clarence Darrow from this fucking moron?
I don't know how much legal work he actually does. It sounds like he's more, I mean, they keep saying a fixer or a Ray Donovan for Donald Trump. It sounds like it's more of that kind of work than actual legal work.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you know, he's some stooge fucking attorney that knows enough to get by. He's like a shade tree mechanic. That's one that doesn't work at the fucking actual auto shop. He sits out in his front yard in a tree under the fucking shade tree and says, I can fix that for you.
Well, you know what it is? It's kind of like, you brought up Dennis before. It's kind of like Dennis. I've seen this with Lawler, too, if I'm going to be honest, where they have normal friends and normal people they know. But then there's something about them where they like to surround themselves with, like, the goobers of society. Just these people, these stooges, these truly talentless people that are like a freak show. And because they kiss up and they don't mind being sycophantic, people like Lawler or Dennis would let them hang around. That's what this reminds me of.
You're not saying that Jerry Lawler would have sycophantic people, Mickey Poole, Plowboy Frazier. You're not. Hey, I don't know. I could count almost for one of Lawler's sycophantic. No, actually, I've done these first because it was Jerry Jarrett's. But nevertheless, but yeah, well, at any rate, Michael Cohen is now. Can you imagine the outrage? And I'll say this and move on. Can you imagine the outrage if Barack Obama's attorney had needed an attorney? Do we even know who Barack Obama's attorney was? No, we don't, because he never needed one.
I saw someone tweet that. They go, this is just like when Obama's attorney got raided by the feds.
Yeah. And speaking of the same ilk of people, you know what ilk is? Ilk is that shit you get after you've milked a turd. You get the ilk. And people of the same ilk is this Chris Loesch. You know, the husband / manager, I've now come to find out, of the noted terrorist cunt and child murder enabler Dana Loesch, who is a spokeswoman for the NRA, and who I recently announced here on the program that is one of the crowning achievements of my life, that I was able, even though she doesn't follow wrestling or whatever, that I was able to let her know that a guy named Jim Cornette in Louisville called her a terrorist cunt and said she ought to be ashamed of herself for all the stupid shit she says. And this enraged the right-wing community when she actually retweeted it, and then God blessed me, right? That was real zinger there. But it enraged the right-wing community that we found out had all the flags and fucking hashtag 2A and pictures of themselves with guns, or pictures of themselves, or pictures of the Constitution, or basically we found out the most patriotic people in America are the people that the government really should be keeping a fucking eye on for the rest of us, is what we found out. And then we went on our merry way. But then over the past week, and you know Gary Damron from All Star Wrestling over in West Virginia, and he's a fine friend of Stephen P. New and the law offices of Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com. But Gary runs shows over there, and he had actually tweeted, and I've been over there and worked with him as his Austin Idol and Rock and Roll, many others, and he had tweeted on Twitter. How else would you tweet it? Some about wanting these people to have a Mattel action figure. And he mentioned me and some other wrestling legends or whatever. And he wasn't talking to this fucking Chris Loesch. And I know people have said they pronounce it Lash, but actually some people have said they ought to pronounce it Leech. So I'm going to pronounce it like they spell it. Loeschsch. Loeschsch. Loesch. So when you want to tell the Loesch's how much you loathe them, spell it right. Anyway, this guy writes back to Gary Damron, who I assume they're not personal friends with. And Gary has actually mentioned that he was not in any way speaking to this guy. Jim Cornette's an idiotic punk.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. He must have been vanity searching your name, not his name, but your name. And then he just found a random tweet and jumped on it.
That's what I was going to, because how else? I don't understand how the whole thing works, because I'm not much on these Twitter things, on the internet machines. But so I've apparently struck a nerve. And we had another little back and forth, and he's not that bright nor that creative, and he apparently wasn't that committed either, because it didn't last long. Because a lot of the cult members got off. See, it has to bother him when my people knock him, but it doesn't bother me when his people knock me, because I'm looking at those people, right? I mean, this guy apparently he's her manager as well as her husband, manager in quotation marks, because she was apparently a failed actress / TV personality, reality TV personality. She's pitched a bunch of stuff. It never happened. Now, because she looks like that the NRA evangelical gun nut right wing crowd thinks a beautiful woman is supposed to look like, because they don't take into account the fucking evil of the soul that is emanating like the goddamn fucking alien creature in V from the eyes and the face of this fucking just harpy. But so she's got that career now where she's out in front of people, baby facing guns and facilitating, children being shot in schools and etc. But you ought to see, when you go to this guy's picture, you ought to see this guy's mustache. He looks like goddamn Wild Bill fucking Dickhawk from the 1870s in Dodge City. He's got one of those snidely whiplash fucking mustaches, and he has pictures of himself and her and other people with guns on his fucking Twitter. This thing consumes their entire life. They vote for a fucking failed real estate con man / reality TV personality for president because he won't take their guns away. They fucking put their guns on their Twitter. They put the guns on their wall. They go out and shoot their guns with their other gun friends. It's like the abortion nuts who don't believe that women should have the right to decide whether they have fucking babies or not. That they will vote on that. They will vote Charles Manson to be president if he'll make sure abortion is illegal. He'll just kill them after they're born. We don't care about it then. The abortion nuts and the gun nuts and the God nuts. If they'll keep God somewhere, we don't care whether they are fucking heinous creatures in real life. If they'll keep God in the school or God in the church or God in the fucking courthouse or God wherever, God on the Supreme Court, it's that group has all found each other, and they have something to universally be fanatical about. And that's why that there's a large enough block that the rest of us sensible people that didn't realize that there was that many of these fucking cretins out there got caught unawares and now need, starting in November, to do something about this shit before we all go down the fucking porcelain throne. And also one more thing real quick. Dana Loesch just said that if Martin Luther King Jr. had had a concealed carry permit, he'd have been okay.
That is fucking ridiculous. Did she really say that?
Once again, I'm just reporting what's been reported on the major news outlets. That
that is fucking ridiculous.
Because how would she know when one of the most famous figures in the history of civil rights and politics was assassinated, and the whereabouts of same, and the whereupons and details of same, and that it was a sniper that they never even knew was there from 270-something feet. So even if he'd had a goddamn 45 strapped to his fucking hip like Kid Colt Outlaw, he wouldn't have fucking bothered to draw it before he got plugged from a football field away by a sniper, you fucking douchebag. And your fucking douchebag husband with his douchebag fucking mustache. And he did a rap routine at one of these fucking conservative political deals. So he's a rotten white rapper too. How can you be an even worse human being than to facilitate the murder of innocent children? That's by being a rotten white rapper. Good fucking God. All right. Should we talk about WrestleMania weekend?
I don't know. What'll be more painful, going back to talking about the white rappers and talking about WrestleMania weekend?
Well, no, but can I just tell you one more set of people that really grinds my gears? Just one more set of people that it's like a hemorrhoid on the ass of my life. I've had a number of people, and I know they mean well, or at least most of them, but especially coming up for WrestleMania weekend, because apparently they don't listen to the program. I'd mentioned I was not going to be in New Orleans. But people will email me, and this will be it'll be one line, like they've sent it, I guess, from their phone or whatever. But these people, I do not know these people. I've never heard of these people. I haven't spoken to these people. So this would be their introduction to me. When somebody will email me at the website and say, this is the entire email, checking on availability Wrestlemania weekend, signed so-and-so. So I wrote one guy back and said, I'm available all weekend, WrestleMania weekend. I'm going to be in Louisville. Where are you? You know? And then sometimes, even if it's not WrestleMania, I'll just get a one-line email that says, what is your booking fee? And I'll write back, to do what, where, for who? Because how do I fucking know? I'm not a plumber, right? I don't have an hourly fucking rate. So for anybody that wants to book me, and really anybody, I would think, I don't know if this is the way the kids do it these days, and they just sit around waiting for, what's your availability on August 23rd for anything, wherever the fuck, without any further information. But I would think if you don't know a person, you would email them, hi, so-and-so, my name is so-and-so, and I'm with so-and-so company, and we're having a show on so-and-so date at so-and-so building in so-and-so town and state, possibly at such and such PM or thereabouts, and we would like to discuss your involvement in same. You can contact us at this email or by phone at such and such. That'd be how I do, because I generally will answer those, but most of them, and I do, once again, sometimes I do yank these people's chain a little bit by going to do who, what for who. But seriously, I don't have any idea. What I charge people when I do work for people depends on how far I have to go, what I have to do when I get there, and how long I have to be gone. And we try to work, and whether my level of interest in doing it or not. Because I just spoke to a young man who would love to have me in New Jersey and all over the Eastern Seaboard, but that's too long. I don't mean to say like a 40-city tour, but New Jersey and a couple of other towns out there, and it's too fucking far. And he wouldn't make any money for what I'd charge him to go that far right now. I'm not traveling. But once again, people, get your booking, shape your booking skills up. Tell people when you're trying to introduce yourself to them and hire them to work for you what you want them to do and when and where it is. Wouldn't that be sensible?
Yeah, because if you get an email that just says, what's your booking rate or what's your available, all I would think from seeing that is, this guy's a jerk off. I don't want to deal with this person. You have to appeal to the person you're trying to approach so that they actually want to work with you.
Because once again, your booking rate, to do what? To do what? To produce a television program, to sign autographs, to appear as a talent on a show, to write to do anything, right? It's poor manners. It's poor manners, and also not enough information for me to make a decision. Anyway, and I want to congratulate somebody over WrestleMania weekend, Ring of Honor, on the house they drew in New Orleans at the Lakefront Arena, which I started running there the last couple of years that Mid-South was around. It's a beautiful building. It seats about right at about 6,000, and they sold it out, which is a hell of a fucking number for anybody. And they have pretty much, at this point, does anybody doubt, with their TV reach and the number of live events they run and the houses they draw, they're the number 2 promotion in the United States, and number 3 is not even close. And I don't even know at this point what it would be.
Do you consider NXT a separate promotion, or because it's owned by WWE?
No, okay. anything where Vince McMahon ultimately pays the bills is his promotion, one way or the other. So no, I do not consider that separate.
I guess they would have to be clearly the number 2, yeah.
But and once again, they've made some questionable talent decisions of late recent years. But the TV is clicking. They've got the best roster that is not signed to anybody named Vince McMahon. And they overall, and they work hard, and they've done a good job. But 6,000 people, even WrestleMania weekend, is a hell of a house, because the best they've done is like 3,000 before or whatever. So that I must congratulate them for that. And but at the same time, I see everybody. It's gotten to be a cottage industry now, and once again, a lot of people's standards are suspect, and I'm not going to cover these shows in great detail because that's what they want, because that's the way people hear about them. But they also had the outlaw shows, the play wrestlers out there having fun, and the play marks that run these things having fun. They hire some legitimate talent to work on their shows, and legitimate talent that wants to be seen in this country or wants to be seen on a big stage work on their shows, where they also have the stupid ass fucking bullshit wrestling, play wrestling. One card had 5 men versus 5 women in a tag match, and the 5 women tapped out the 5 men simultaneously. What they actually did an invisible man just because they could, because nobody's there to stop them. There's no adults in the room, and the invisible man bumped people around, and the typical indie outlaw darlings that, you know, stick candy in their dick and fucking dicks in their face or whatever the fuck it is. They worked every show in every closet and phone booth to make dozens and dozens fucking laugh. But who would have thought Ring of Honor showings blew everybody else away, and they at least have a high level of talent and don't just shit on the business directly, even though they use people that have. But if you'd have told me 30 years ago that 15 wrestling promotions would run New Orleans in a weekend, and the WWF shows would have had the least amount of bullshit and gaga, I would have had you committed. Remember when it was the WWF wrestling that was fucking cartoon? And now every other show except, and I didn't see the Ring of Honor show. I don't know what they did. They would have been one of the only ones that top to bottom apparently would have contained less gaga than the WWE show, because everybody else was doing that man versus woman, dick spot, invisible man, outlaw, fringe, indie bullshit that a bunch of drunk fuckers. You can get 500 drunk fuckers in New Orleans with 100,000 wrestling fans in town to watch chickens fuck, and they literally, it's the same entertainment value, and it would be less messy on the wrestling business. But at least the WWE had some bad fucking wrestling and some silly shit, but at least they didn't do most of it in the ring. I'm astonished that now they've become the serious standard practically. And once again, it would have been Ring of Honor far and away, and I wouldn't have even said that if it was the Ring of Honor a few years ago. But they do have, you know, I don't know if they did any bullshit or not, but
all that shit that you and so many other people hated for so many years, like The Undertaker dying and rising up through the ceiling. For every fan that had been a longtime fan, or just a fan with different sensibilities at that point, who said that's the silliest thing, the worst thing I've ever seen, there's a whole group of fans who grew up, they were kids, and they saw that, and they think that's what wrestling is, or at least they think that's an acceptable part of wrestling, that kind of hokiness. And I think that's what you see. You see a lot of these kids now who grew up on that early 90s or mid-90s WWF, who just, they don't care about the silliness as much as someone like me, or obviously someone like you.
Well, I guess, yeah, because the people listen to me, I can't even speak. The people on Twitter that tweet, what's the deal? It's wrestling. It's supposed to be silly and fun. What's the deal? It's comedy. It's supposed to be tragic and cause you to want to cut your throat. That doesn't connect to me. That why would you connect one of those things with the other? Or why should you? It doesn't make sense. But at any rate, before we get to WrestleMania, everybody was talking about another match over the weekend at NXT at their takeover event. Where was that? What building was that? Was that the lakefront or no?
It may.
What building were they in?
I'm not sure. I will look that up for you right now.
Well, at any rate, they had a nice house. Had a very nice house. But the match that everybody was talking about was Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. And we had talked about, they had such a great match when they were a team with the Revival that we watched, 6 months ago. And now they've told a story and they've broken up, and Ciampa's the heel and Gargano's the baby face, and everybody made a big deal out of this match, and you wanted me to watch this match, right? In addition to WrestleMania. And this match was very long.
By the way, it's at the Smoothie King Center.
Okay, then it's a bigger building than the lakefront. So they had a real nice house. But at any rate, from the history package, there's a recurring theme, and I don't want to go into it right now because everybody think I'm shitting on Johnny Gargano all of a sudden right off the bat. And no, I'm not going to shit on this whole thing, but there are things that I think could be improved. But from the history package, I noticed one thing with Johnny Gargano, which we'll talk about. Ciampa, I think his promos have really come a long way, and he sounds. Oh, it was only clips, so I didn't see him do a long live promo. There's some sit-down headshot comments and some clips from in-ring, but he sounded like he meant it. He's grown the fucking beard. He has a heel face. He's in good shape. He's dropped weight, because he's had bad knees in the past, and it's probably better for him to do that. And so he has great look and great talk, sounds great as a heel. That was fine. People were saying he had old school heat. He didn't have old school heat, and this is not the fault of the performer. He can't get it. He has heat with those people that boo him because they like Gargano and they know that Ciampa's being the heel, and he's getting under their skin, and they kind of are working with him, but also they're mad that the whole team busted up and et cetera, et cetera. But nobody in that crowd's going to try to physically attack him. Nobody's going to try to cut him with a knife. They're not going to jump the rail when he's beating up Gargano. It's not old school heat, but it's good heat, and it's more than a lot of people have these days, where they're bringing the signs for the other guy and they're fucking getting on this guy and chanting he sucks. But part of it is because that's part of the program and it's a cool thing for them to do, and they're having fun. So it's not old school heat. Nobody's going to jail here. Just want to clear that up. I love that they had the intro touch that both guys signed the release, that this was basically a lights out match because there's a hold harmless agreement. We're not going to sue anybody. But they had a hot start, and they fight, and they go out into the people, right? And the hot start in the ring, and they fought, boom, boom, boom. It was pretty cool, and they go out into people, and here's where I really noticed the deal. Now, anybody that wants to go back and watch this whole thing, don't blame me, but if you want to, with this in mind, Johnny Gargano's biggest weakness, he's not the biggest guy, but he's in great physical shape, and, he's not in there with a giant, so it looked fine. His work is technically, he does things well. He appeared to be safe. He wasn't dangerous. Can he get more than one facial expression? Go back and look at it. He has two. He has a mad look that's just kind of mad, kind of intense mad, and a dazed look when he's selling, like he just got shit knocked out of him and doesn't know what's going on. Find me any other facial expression. Find me a facial expression when he's selling and his hands are always, or his arms over his face, or his hands in front of his face, or his facing down. He needs to watch Ricky Morton selling videos, not only to find out how to sell, but how to show his face when he's doing it. The way to sell and still keep your face visible to the fucking people, and you're on your knees and you're trying to crawl away, whatever the fuck. But he has that dazed look, not a pain look, but a dazed look down pat whenever he's had a big move applied to him. You know what I'm saying, Brian? But there's not excruciating pain. There's not joy. There's not agony. There's not glorying in the fucking crowd. There's not wide-eyed, I'm going to kill you. There's just mean look and dazed look. And you can't see most of those half time. So besides the floor camera was making me sick down there on the floor, they spent so long out on the floor and on the same side. And that's what you asked me if I watched the Gargano and Ciampa match before we went on the air. I told you I watched all of them. They had 4 matches here in this match. In this one match, they had 4 matches. Because they did 4 finishes at least. And it was long enough for 4 fucking matches if they'd really goddamn just... And it was schizophrenic. They stay so long on the floor because they want to do that back and forth stuff. And sure, there's a million cameras following them because it's the WWE and they got great production. But you're losing 3/4 of the people in the building that can't fucking see you, especially on the other side of the ring and on the floor, and it gets old and they don't give a shit, or they're watching a screen. And then when they're watching the screen, they figure out, hey, we paid $100 or more to come down here in person and watch this shit on a screen. If they have to go out fighting on the floor, keep the tempo up. have the babyface knock the fucking heel to the floor and follow him out there and dust him up a little bit and throw him back in the ring. But as the babyface is coming back in, the heel cuts the babyface off coming through the ropes. It goes to shoot him off the other side and goes to swing, but the babyface ducks, fucking drop kicks the heel. The heel goes out the far side. Then they do the next thing they wanted to do on the goddamn floor, but they're in front of new people that are going to stand up and get into it. Then, goddamn, the heel throws the babyface back in, but the babyface is up and fucking kicks him off. And goddamn, they set up a spot where the babyface knocks the heel off to the other side of the floor where he can do his fucking dive. Don't just stay out there all goddamn day. And the cutoff spots should be, in my opinion, either in the ring or right at ringside, like on the apron, etc., not in the crowd because most people can't see them. Then they went back in the ring. Then they went back out to the desk. And I like Tommaso's bump over the fucking desk. But I like that they left the equipment on. But then a vertical suplex off the TV desk onto the concrete, not with any padding, or if there was padding, anyway, the point is suplex off the goddamn table onto the floor that early. They're still going another fucking 15, 20 minutes. And that was a needless risk for the guys, both guys' spines, especially the guy taking it, and their ribs and everything else. And so that would have been a great, leading into the finish. That'd have been lovely. Then they stay outside where they use pieces of the table, bring the shit inside the ring and start using it there where everybody can see it and where guys can take bigger bumps. Hit the guys with the furniture. Don't hit the furniture with the guys. Let the guys take bumps in the ring where you're supposed to. And everybody can see it again. The guys were serious and the work was good and sharp for the most part. And when Tommaso was in charge, I thought for the heat, at least he took his time a little better. And I'm looking at, at notes that I made. Tommaso's heel facials are great. His gear looks cool. But then they did, when they're in the ring, they did good shit. When they went outside the ring, it was too long, or they lost momentum. Or here's another example. And I'm not trying to shit on these guys. I'm trying to think how they can make it better because they work so hard. You have to give them that. But remember the spot where Tommaso stole the crutches from the guy in the leg brace, like he'd had knee surgery or whatever. He's a fan across the barricade, and Tommaso grabs his crutches, right?
Yes, of course.
Okay. That's one of the best ideas actually I've ever fucking heard of, and I would have loved if they'd have done this right. He jerks both crutches away from the guy in a knee brace, and he takes him into the ring. But before he does, you immediately see one of the security guys coming up and not grabbing, but helping hold up the one-legged guy and helping him hop away from the rail.
That's right, yeah.
That is not what a security guard would do, right? And then Tommaso takes the fucking crutches in the ring and takes one of them and goes through 3 or 4 phony, fake ducks and misses and etc. before brother gets his crutches away or gets the crutch away from him, right? If they had just done this, if they were ready for the heat, then they could have legitimately had fucking Gargano beating the piss out of Ciampa on the floor, and the referee try to get Gargano back in the ring, and Ciampa sees a guy stand there at the rail with crutches, and Ciampa snatches both of them and pulls him over the fucking barricade, and one security guard grabs the crippled guy and just helps him slowly down to the ground so he's not, because that's what you would do, right? And another security guard makes a lunge over the barricade and snatches at the crutches and grabs one of them, because they only used one anyway. Grabs one of them and pulls that away from Ciampa and falls on his face on the floor, which gives Ciampa time to roll in the ring with the other one and either whack the fucking babyface and knock him goofy, or the babyface ducks one time and gets it away from him and fucking knocks Tommaso goofy. And then it would have looked like a shoot. And then you got people going instead of the phony choreography of the fake ducks and misses and etc. And people not buying it anyway because they, it's not what would happen. I've actually been in tug of wars with audience members for my own gimmick, the tennis racket. And that's not how any of that shit works. It just helped the fucking guy away. They do more good wrestling stuff. The spot into the power bomb deal was off the apron was great, and that was stiff but not ridiculous, right? But a guy just took a power bomb off the apron, and it wasn't as big a bump as the bump that he took 5 to 7 minutes beforehand, where it was a superplex off the table. But they did that power bomb could have been a great fucking lead into a finish also, because who else do you see taking a power bomb on goddamn that's when they had moved the mats on the unprotected floor. But he carried him down flat, and Tommaso was spread out, and there was a good smack on the concrete because he was spread out. But so that was an acceptable risk for a big show. At least the way that I viewed it. I don't know. Tommaso may say, fuck you. I saw crooked for 3 days. But then they go back to a tug of war over a crutch that wasn't thrilling to me. Just babyface, start your comeback. Because they were going so long. If they'd have kept, and I know now people will say, well, Cornette, they were trying to sell all this dangerous shit they did. If they'd have just run right through it, then you would complain they didn't sell. No. There's a happy medium somewhere. They were trying to milk this thing out to be 35, 40 minutes where it could be a classic. And there was points where they would do good stuff and they'd have the crowd, but then they would lay there so fucking long that I'm just like, goddamn. It didn't, you don't need to fucking go 100 miles an hour all the time, but you don't need there was not that much drama needed. Let's continue getting to the point and don't do 4 or 5 legitimate finishes, angle finishes in the goddamn same match. So then he gets beat up with the crutch, and then they expose the buckle, which was a great camera shot. Best exposing the turnbuckle camera shot I've ever seen.
Yeah, I agree.
But it got so, and my next note is, got so slow here, I wanted to quit watching because they milked going into the buckle and then didn't, and then laid there. Then suddenly they started doing spots so fast, it was like it was the 3rd minute in, not 30 minutes in, which is where it was. After they'd taken these big bumps, they're just boom, 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 boom again. So they're having a schizophrenic match. There was a nice reversal by Gargano on that rope break when Tommaso got to the ropes and Gargano kicked his fingers off and then fucking rolled through and got it again, and Tommaso had to go to the eyes. But I thought Mauro Ranallo, I might have needed some decaf at that point.
He was. I'm a Mauro fan. He was ridiculous during this match, and quite frankly, on NXT this night, he's got to tone it back a little bit with the just the silly references in the middle of the match. Just every other sentence is dirty deeds or just some kind of reference he throws in there. Just relax and call the match normally.
But no, and Moro's, and we love him. He was just trying to, because, and anybody that watched me on OVW knows I got the last thing to say about anybody being hyper, but I only had 42 minutes. He had like 3 hours on this thing. But not only he was over the top on that going to the eyes, but then he stooged the tape spot. If you notice it, because like fucking Nigel was like, well, why is Ciampa unrolling his wrist tape? And before he had even made any threatening move with it, Nigel was trying to call attention to it, and then he was going to go choke fucking Gargano with it, right? And Mauro just jumped in and said, because he's going to try to damage Johnny Gargano with it. And then he did, so you need to calm down just a little bit, Mauro. But then it got good again. They had a long 1-2 spot. It got the people back. And they were slugging and slobber knocking, and then they completely, once again, dropped selling exhaustion and that they'd run out of things to do to each other and completely stopped fighting or moving, and for a long period of time. And then there was a chop fest and a big Johnny Gargano comeback. And then finally the fucking lawn dart thing into the exposed turnbuckle. He sends Tommaso Ciampa, lawn darts him into an exposed turnbuckle. Boom. And when he rolls back in the middle of the ring, he hits him with a super kick. Boom. Then he hits him with a super kick while he's on his knees. Boom. And then he gets a 2 count, and there's no juice from a mouth or a head or much less a fit. How can that not be? There's another finish in one of these 4 or 5 matches they had here. Then they go to the top rope, and once again, I'm not trying to bury these guys, but whoever put the match together, they're trying for this ultimate epic journey or whatever, but it was several matches. It was too much of the big stuff in the middle that you couldn't live through, and you don't need to. And when they went to do the deal off the top rope, where Tommaso gives him his finish, whatever he calls it, off the top rope, but they had to get up there an awkward fight where the helping the balance is obvious because they can't really do much because why are they standing up there to begin with if you wanted some kind of advantage forever and ever? Then a great move where Tommaso's legitimately had knee problems, so he drops a guy off the top rope onto his knees while he's then he takes his brace off to allegedly sell that his knee is hurt, but that's not the finish. None of that is the finish. Then they do a spot where Gargano gets Tommaso and hits him with his own brace, but then he did some stagey shit, once again debating whether or not to hit Tommaso with the crutch that he'd picked up because Tommaso's now begging, and they did used to be friends, but Gargano's got the same facial expression. And he's expecting everybody in that building of 10 or 12,000 people to be able to, because I guess they're watching the big screen. Well, they didn't used to have a big screen, so you used to have to be able to portray with your body language and your facial expressions what was going on. And none of that is happening here. But thanks to the announcers, we at home know that he doesn't want to hit him, maybe. But at that point, my God, he's been fucking pummeled and beaten to within an inch of his life several times. I don't know if I would have mercy for the guy at this point. It was just another thing to slow it down and some wooden facials. And then Tommaso tries to sucker him, but he ducks that and gets his hold and then gets an STF with Tommaso's knee brace around Tommaso's neck. And Tommaso taps out, which was a great idea for the finish. But a rotten setup because they'd fucking teased and ducked and dodged it to the point where it was stagey and slow in so many spots. I'm just one more thing. If you're going to sell an intense grudge fight, then you need to try to keep the intensity up, and however long you can go keeping the intensity up, go that long. Whether if it's 17 minutes, instead of going 30 or 35 and just having 3 or 4 different fucking matches. I don't know.
A couple of things, Jim. First, this is the most modern wrestling I've watched in like a short period of time in a while, because I watched NXT and then I watched Wrestlemania. And you hit on something that is just awful, and I really hate it, because it seems like everyone does it now. The really phony-looking duck and miss. It's in every match. It's nonstop. It's for kicks. It's for punches. It's for a weapon. It's just everyone does it, and it looks like shit every fucking time. So
I've actually there was going to be more of this on the WrestleMania wrap up, and I'll show you why. I'll tell them why that it fucking sucks so bad.
You said you wondered who put the match together. Do you know who the agent was for this match?
I have no idea.
Shawn Michaels.
What?
Shawn Michaels was the agent for the match.
I bet you then he let them do probably everything they wanted to do. is my opinion of that then. I bet you. Anyway, and I'm not trying to, and I thought Tommaso did a great job of being a heel and a real heel and having heel expressions, and he looks great and he does good shit. Both these guys athletically do good shit, but it was all over the place. And I don't know. I don't know. The WrestleMania show itself. Let's get started there with the pre-show. There was a pre-show on USA that started at 6:00, and they still didn't. When did the Battle Royal happen? 4:00 that morning? The Andre the Giant Battle Royal? I never saw it.
It happened sometime between 6 and 8. I don't know. It must have happened around 6.
I think it happened before 6:00 because I was watching the USA kickoff show at 6 p.m. Eastern.
It's so fucking long. It's so fucking long. I mean,
so I never saw the Battle Royal, but I tuned in to this USA kick. This is an hour of time on USA Network between 6 and 7 o'clock. And they treated on Sunday night before the biggest show of the year, the pay-per-view, the sell the network, whatever. And they treated it like one of the old Barker Channel fucking pay-per-view pregame shows that we used to fucking hate to do because who was going to watch that shit? They should have called this Announcer Mania, right? It was just boom, here we are in the Superdome, no cold open. to really get people into a fucking show. Where's Dave Sahadi when you need him? No package at the start. I had to write all these people's name down. Renee Young, that what his name? Rosenberg's Peter Rosenberg.
Something, yeah.
Some fella named Rosenberg. Booker T, David Otunga are at a desk. Those are 4 announcers already, and it was just a flat open. And I'm sorry, if Renee Young is going to be the host of something, they need a male voice growling at the start. Welcome to WrestleMania or whatever the fuck. But this is USA Network. It wasn't a Barker Channel show. They just opened like they were all sitting there waiting for a goddamn bus. And then they pitched down to Sam Roberts. This was the best part of the fucking show. They pitched to Sam Roberts on the floor in the crowd and to say something, and he got so hopelessly lost, and they left him twisting in the fucking wind. I can't even by the time that I could have gone back, I was filling up my fucking DVR, and I said, fuck it, I'm going to delete all this shit. But this is one of the things I wanted to watch again. He said something and kind of half-ass finished his thought, but they were obviously telling him to stretch, so he kept going. Then he got into something he couldn't get out of, and finally he figured out how to get out of it, but they didn't know he was finished. They just stayed on him. He looked like he was ready to dig a fucking hole with a shovel in the floor to escape. It was like a Saturday Night Live sketch. It was the most awkward-looking fucking live television moment I've seen in a long time. And I don't think we saw him again. So he may have died of fucking embarrassment. Anyway, the Superdome looked great. The lighting, etc., all that looked great. Then you see Rockstar Spud / Drake Maverick with the cruiserweight belt, I believe it was. Then we joined Nigel McGuinness and Vic Joseph are the announcers. And Cedric Alexander against Mustafa Ali was the first match that I saw on the official program. Cedric, I know from Ring of Honor. We used him with Caprice Coleman in the tag team back 2011, 2012. He was so young then. Now he looks in great shape. He's lost weight. He looks fucking ripped. Mustafa Ali, I've never seen. I have no idea what his fucking gimmick is. He came out looking like a fucking cyborg. There was some fucking outfit. It was the worst entrance music I've ever heard in my life. So I don't really know what the fuck's going on there. And herein is your duck spot incarnate. These guys are great athletes, but they started with well done gymnastics. They were gymnastics. They were well done, but they were gymnastics. It was flawless, smooth, controlled, rolling through and reversing. And when somebody swings and the other guy ducks and keeps running, the guy that just swung doesn't register it on his face. Doesn't look like, wow, I missed a fucking guy. Doesn't get off balance, immediately flows right into the rope so that they can smoothly come together for the next stage of the spot. And I'm not one to knock Cedric here because, like I said, and part of it is they know they have a limited amount of time. They're in this big building. They're probably nervous. Oh, shit, we don't want to fuck up. The whole 9 yards, the pressure. Believe me, I've main evented that building, gentlemen. Thank you. And I've wrestled on WrestleMania. And my shit with Brother Love looked more real than y'all guys shit did because we were actually potatoing each other for one thing, fucking accidentally bloodying each other. But don't be so smooth. Pause in between the moves sometimes like you're thinking of them as you do them rather than reciting a routine in your mind or executing a routine that you have in your mind. There needs to be more surprise reaction to the counters or to the missed moves instead of just flowing through to the next thing. They did, I guess this is modern wrestling. They did all their stuff well. Once again, there was another. They wanted to take a big bump, both of them off the top rope. So they did a deal where they have to help each other up there and awkwardly try to position and help balance each other until they get it set. So you can see right through it. It's a buzz killer. So they take the risk for no reason. Well, there's a reason. Everybody knows it's fucking phony and they're not counting the setup against you necessarily. But if you notice the classic matches, you can't see through the setups. So it's funny how that works out. So they did everything they did well. It was a performance. And I don't know why on my USA Network special, a Ronda Rousey VTR package popped up in the middle of that match. I don't know why. I didn't even hear a pitch to it. But anyway, they did. they did a reverse Frankensteiner that why in the fuck with all the neck problems are people still doing that move? It's not necessary. And I just didn't Cedric when they did the false finish on the splash, right? Cedric should have beat him there or just hit his finish, but they just slowed it down and he just did several things to where it was like instead of wham 1 2 3 yeah, it was like wham 1 2 3 yeah. That's just what I thought. I hate that they say biggest show in all of entertainment. I hate that shit. They did the promos with John Cena sitting in the crowd. It felt like they were filling time on the USA Network. Instead of, they should have had a ball buster fucking 44-minute or whatever time they get per hour without commercials fucking show that would sell their fucking main events that night. Then they introed Beth Phoenix and Corey Graves and Paige as more announcers. Paige looked like she was in criminal court. What the fuck was the matter with her? She looked like she could give a fuck, and she sounds like one of the fun girls from Mount Pilot. The ones that used to chase Andy and Barney. Hello, doll. When did she start sounding like goddamn Tallulah Bankhead? What I'm asking you some serious questions.
I can't tell you. All I know is the first time I saw Paige on WrestleMania was that promo video for her movie where she pops up and it's a close up of her face. And I don't know if she's into Rocky Horror or what it is, but her makeup was just, who am I to criticize someone's makeup? But her makeup was ridiculous and she sounded high as fuck. I don't know. But that was one of the highlights of WrestleMania.
So then they do plug the movie on USA and they go to the women's battle royal, which alternated to me between everybody standing around and everybody fighting everybody and what the fuck that's actually what the fuck is my fucking note. This went on forever. And I'm not knocking the girls. I'm sure in there somewhere were some girls that can work, but I couldn't tell from having a goddamn clusterfuck battle royal where I don't know what the fuck was going on, and there was a lot of blah. When it got down to be Bayley and Sasha, they got the people. And they had them then because you could understand what the fuck was going on, and it wasn't such a fucking clusterfuck. And then there was a great pop for Bayley tossing her, and then there's Naomi, which I had not noticed. I had not noticed she was still in it because I didn't know what the fuck was going on previously. But she steals it. So, but she's a heel because she steals the battle royal like a heel against Bayley, who's a babyface. But then Naomi is happy and celebrates like a babyface, and the announcers talk about how great it is she's won. Who the fuck are the babyfaces and the heels here?
I think Naomi's a babyface. I think.
Then why did she steal the battle royal?
There are no friendships in a battle royal.
Oh, good God. All right. Fuck. The Reigns and Brock package was very cool, serious and violent stuff. I want to always say that their packages and their productions head and shoulders above everything else in the business, and it usually has been, but I think Dave Sahadi's packages had more drama. And fucking and better wrap ups and the fucking the voiceover voice they sometimes would use and etc. But anyway, then the more announcers filled and fuck around is what I wrote. At the close of this show, it was not. That's all you saw on the USA was the fucking. It was the cruiserweight match, which is what it was. But then the women's battle royal and a bunch of plugs and a bunch of announcers. Fucking, that's all I saw. I don't know, maybe I missed something. I did have to stop a couple times through this night and pause it to either piss or a couple times make a sandwich, and to shave once. I had to shave once. But all right, here we go with WrestleMania. Once again, a female announcer. I'm sorry. Why couldn't we have Howard Finkel? I need to hear a goddamn loud bass male voice. Welcome to WrestleMania instead of the girls. I'm sorry. But who was Chloe and Hallie?
I have no idea. What were they introduced as? The future of music?
Well, fucking Then if I was a musician right now, I'd goddamn try to find another line of work or retrain myself. The Dome looked great. Okay, now here's Michael Coles, Corey Graves, Jonathan Coachman. Announcer Mania continues. In part of the intro package had to be sponsored by the New Orleans Travel Bureau, I'm pretty sure. But that was a nice package. They did their pyro and ballyhoo. They did a great light show. Here comes the Intercontinental title match, and it's a three-way. So the first match out of the gate on the pay-per-view is a multiple-man match. I do not at all, as I've mentioned, get Miz's look. I don't get his outfit. I don't get his whole deal. They introed the Spanish announcers and the German announcers, and there was three of the Germans.
Whenever they do that throughout the show, it's ridiculous because they just want to show off that, look, how many countries we're in, because all you get is this. And let's now go to the team from Germany. Oh, good about Wrestlemania. Then they go to the other guy who's just like, I need to say something too. We're here at Wrestlemania. Then they go to the next. It's just the same thing over and over.
And you know what? But and later on, I wrote it down. Then we heard they had Chinese, they had Japanese, they had Spanish, they had Italian, they had Russian, they had Portuguese. Next year they got to do a phony country. Next year, they have got to do a phony, like a Borat bunch of bullshit and introduce, here's Go-Fuckistan or wherever, and have the fucking announcers speaking Carney. And
they should do they should do a smart feed just for the smart fans who want to shit on everything. Why not? That's a great idea. Why not?
Well, now people will think you're lobbying for a job as one of the announcers, because I have
no interest in working for WWE. I'll say it right now.
But to knock it? Anyway, no. Okay, Rollins versus Miz versus Finn Balor. This, once again, it was quick and fast and precise stuff. But it was too fast, and it was rushed, and it was too smooth. And I know that, once again, here's the opening match of WrestleMania, even though they've seen apparently 3 or 4 other matches in the building. And you've only got a limited amount of time. You don't want to go over. You want to do your stuff. But it was once again, and I love Rollins. And I've been a fan of Balor's. I haven't seen that much of him since he became Finn Balor. But also, is everybody a babyface here? If so, why are they all fucking fighting at the biggest show of the year? And who are we supposed to cheer for? Because Miz just had a baby. I thought he was a heel. He sure looked like a fucking heel. He looks like a big dick in that fucking outfit. And then they talk about his baby he just had. So he's a baby face, but they fucking like Balor. He's a baby face. Rollins, they fucking like him. He's a baby face. What the fuck?
Plus, what bigger baby face spot is there for a heel than he comes out on the entranceway and sends his boys back? No. I want to go out there on my own. I want to do it myself. For my baby.
So it was a multiple person match. It was good for what it was. Rollins stole the show for me, but Balor was good too. I just don't get Miz. But that's I don't know, a blow off match or a match you just need to put 3 people in, and who are we supposed to fucking boo? Then we meet Tom Phillips and Byron Saxton for the women's title match. Charlotte and Asuka, and this was fucking fabulous. From the entrances, Charlotte looks great. Asuka had a great fucking, has oomph on her entrance, everything. Their wrestling looked more like a struggle than the men's. That's what I'm saying. Make it, instead of being so smooth and so flawless, like they think like that's what they're supposed to be working for, to where the boys will say, wow, look how smooth he is. But no, you're supposed to be struggling against your opponent for this shit. And the women struggled, and the men had not been struggling as much. And you can tell Charlotte's a great athlete, and they did great stuff. And the moonsault into the fucking triangle was insane. And the suplex off the apron to the floor, which was a second one of those basically I've seen in fucking 2 days, that was too much for the girls. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm going to be sexist there. There's no reason vertical suplex off the apron on the floor. Those girls don't have any fucking padding. They don't have enough fat on them to fucking do that. And it's too much. That should have been could have been a count out angle. That could have been a goddamn turn of some fucking description, right? But anyway, otherwise than that, and besides, they did a Spanish fly off the top rope for a 2 count. It's great they can do it, but once again, let's save it for next. This is not, it's like potato chips. They'll make more matches. This is not the last match you're ever going to have. It doesn't have to be. Charlotte does a great spear. They chopped each other nice. I thought the figure four into the bridge was incredible, and you do have to have Charlotte Flair win, at that point in time. But then
we just talked about streaks ending on the drive-thru. So what did you think about that? The fact that it was the end of Asuka's winning streak.
Well, and that was great because it's at WrestleMania and to who they are presenting as the premier female athlete, and it sets shit up for the future.
I agree. So, fantastic match.
And it's a full-time person that's ending the streak, and it's not like she can have another streak. It's not like you can't have another 20-win WrestleMania streak in the next 20 fucking years, or probably whatever. But that was I could have done without all the hugging at the end. I still want a little bit more grudge with my wrestling, but
it was a great match. And believe it or not, Battle Royal notwithstanding, I believe that the women's division right now is the best thing on the main roster for WWE. It's the best athletes, it's the best matches, and it's not as silly as some of the male stuff. I think it's the best thing they have going right now.
I think the thing with the Battle Royal, I'm not trying to shit on the fact that all the girls wanted to be on the show, but that's the problem. Everybody, apparently, at this point in time, everybody cannot be on this show because they have too many people. I mean, and I was in a gimmick Battle Royal at WrestleMania 17, and with 20, including many Hall of Famers, and me and Bruce Pritchard. Still, it was a 3-hour show, and we were only out there for 12 minutes or whatever. And they still had everybody else on the show, but they've expanded too far. There's too many people. So it's going to have to be, if they're going to keep WrestleMania being one show, it's got to be, this is what everybody works toward, and only the elite are going to get on it every year. And hopefully, they can rotate some of the underneath matches or give other people a chance or whatever. But you can't just make this a consolation prize and have a battle royal and have a women's battle royal and have goddamn these multi-person matches, besides the fact that they mostly suck because they're awkward and there's no reason for them except in certain circumstances. It doesn't show anybody to their best light usually. Anyway. The figure four into the one-armed bridge was incredible for Charlotte, and this is what we're going to start looking at. This was a schizophrenic show too, because this and Styles and Nakamura and Angle and Rousey's match with Triple H and Stephanie were not in any way similar to each other, but they looked like they belonged on the same show. But then there was other shit that didn't look like there's always been a need for the matches to have variety on a card. A tag match, a single match, a grudge match fight, a technical match, a girls match, the difference in the matches, but it can't be that this is like putting the Invisible Man on the same card with goddamn the fucking Bret Hart and Steve Austin I Quit match or whatever. It just doesn't look like the same company should have presented all this stuff, as we will talk about. Anyway, here comes a four-way. After the girls' match and the three-way for the U.S. title. Bobby Roode and Rusev and Jinder Mahal and Randy Orton. And I've always been a Bobby Roode fan. And Randy Orton looks and is a superstar and a premier where he has every bit of it, all the looks, all the tools. When he's motivated, even when he's not, he can coast and get by because he's a natural. And Bobby Roode is incredible. And you could tell they were levels above the other two guys in timing and positioning and body language and execution of things. I wish that this had been a single match. I'd love to see Roode and Orton. But once again, it was after we met the French and Italian and Chinese and Hindu and Portuguese and Russian and Japanese announcers. They did a cool multiple RKO spot, and I caught Rusev slapping his leg on a kick that the guy was supposed to duck and did duck, and he slapped his leg anyway because he forgot. But they've got Bobby Roode in a match and Randy Orton in a match, and Jinder Mahal wins it. And it just, I don't know. And it was too many people. This
match was I'm going to go watch the Mets game for a little bit break in the show. because they were on Sunday Night Baseball, unfortunately, because ESPN just ruins baseball by putting it on Sunday nights. I missed most of it. I will say this. If I was going to start a promotion, I think Rusev would be one of the first people I'd want to sign. I think he's a star. I think he's money.
Well, I saw I don't understand the Rusev Day thing. And I understand he had his own ring announcer, but I don't know. I bet, but I haven't seen, once again, nobody gets over in a 4-way. Whether it's wrestling or sex.
Well, let me ask you this, Jim.
At least in my experience.
Not necessarily exclusive to this match or even about this match, but overall from everything you saw this weekend, because this was one of the things that really hit me. If I told you there was no wellness policy whatsoever, would you believe me?
None whatsoever, no. Selective enforcement, yes.
Oh, my God. It's like going back 20 years to the late 90s. It's almost like they just dropped it because some of the physiques I've seen this last few days, come on, it's ridiculous. There's only one way you can get those physiques. I've been in a gym. I've been a bodybuilder. There's only one way to get those physiques. So something's up.
And once again, not everybody. I mean, I think we're good on Miz. Miz ain't on anything.
You're going to hate this. You're going to hate me saying this. I've come around on Miz.
Oh.
Not necessarily in-ring work, but he's believable as the dick that you hate. But his promos, he's actually one of the best heel promos in the business. And he gets real heel heat as opposed to just go away heat, which I think he used to have. I've come around on Miz. I think he does a really good job in that role.
Well, I guess anything's possible. We'll see what happens. Next time I watch WrestleMania, I'll check back in with him. Okay, the Rousey match package, that was great stuff, obviously. Oh, and Mick Foley was with somebody in a candy bar spot. Triple H and Stephanie entrance, Angle entrance, Rousey entrance. Here is my only criticism. Ronda Rousey comes out without the game face. She's smiling. She's happy. No, I wanted to see the goddamn entrance. I wanted to see that face. And I can't believe that everybody else wouldn't have told her specifically, even if they thought there was doubt whether she would or not, have the face. It just hurt my feelings. I want to see that fucking face. But apart from that, this was not only the highlight of the entire fucking show, but the highlight of the weekend and probably the best fucking professional wrestling match that I've seen in I don't know how long. It was perfect. If Triple H laid this out, I bow to him. He is a genius. But they took their time. They started with some gaga. Kurt and Triple H, slowed it down and set everything up, and Stephanie could do a few heel manager little spots. Then Ronda takes the nice bump off the apron. They were setting it up, but finally when she gets the tag, and there's another little logic loophole in that, yes, Stephanie McMahon has suddenly become physically capable of blocking the fucking armbar from the most accomplished female fighter in the world, but accepting that also. The best thing at that point, an hour and a half or more into WrestleMania, was Stephanie McMahon fighting Ronda Rousey. It was what it was supposed to be. They did it great. The people were with it. And they didn't go too long before the guys got back in so the people wouldn't get tired of it. And they did table stuff. And then the spot with Ronda and fucking Triple H, which was the timing all the way through was great on shit. They milked shit. And then it was chaos from there as soon as, they did that. Then fucking Triple H and Angle have another great series. Ronda was there for everything timing-wise. She had to make a save once. It was right there. The armbar on Triple H and then on Stephanie, boom, boom, boom. And once again, Ronda Rousey tapping out Stephanie McMahon, which was exactly what they needed to fucking do at WrestleMania. This could have been, and I'm not saying it was all because of her, but the way it was set up and the way that the setup was executed by all parties, can you think of a better debut match for anybody ever in history?
No, and that's the one thing I've been thinking about. The previous at WrestleMania, you had Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam, which was obviously Lawrence Taylor's out of breath and Bam Bam carries him, but it was really good at the time. But I've never seen anyone, You know, you hear a lot of people talk about Kurt Angle that way.
The thing, a lot of people will also, I don't mean to cut you off, and you can come back to that, but a lot of people will say, well, Lawrence Taylor and Bam Bam was better because they wrestled and blah, blah, blah. No, the thing is, the overall presentation of the match, how strong did it get over with people, and how flawless was it in its execution on all parts? And Bam Bam and Lawrence Taylor was good for what it was, but it was not those things.
Right. And Kurt Angle's a guy who you always heard, and you were there at the very beginning. He was someone who got it right away. Right away he got it, and right away he was really good. For first match, this was spectacular. And like you said, a lot of credit goes to Triple H. I know he has a lot of douchebag moments in his past, but he's done a lot of good shit in the last few years, and NXT's a great example of it. This match was great. And then fucking Stephanie was fantastic.
Yeah.
She was perfect. I mean, I can't even say it any better. She was perfect in this match.
And here's the thing. And by the way, Kurt Angle's very first match, because I didn't even see that one, but I saw some of the early ones. He was a great athlete, but there was tentative moments and missed timing and et cetera, et cetera. He got it early and quick, but he didn't get it from the first match was not a classic. This is Ronda Rousey's first match is fucking classic on a big stage, best debut match ever, in my opinion. And I wish, actually, that almost just finished right there. It had been easier for me in the long run.
Hey, I got to tell you, though, Jim, I watched this match. I watched most of the show with my kids, but this match especially they paid attention to. They were so into it. And when it ended, my oldest, who's 11, jumped up and she screamed. She was so into it. She was like moving around the room. She said, that's the greatest match I've ever seen. And, you know, what kid says that who's not a big wrestling fan?
Yeah.
They were totally hooked. It was just done to perfection. Everyone deserves so much credit for that match.
But now here we can save some time because the next match was for one of the tag team titles. Every match, by the way, that wasn't a gimmick match was for a championship, which means, once again, you got to rein that shit in. I'm sorry. It's meaningless. When there's multiple tag team champions, multiple singles champions, multiple weight champions, they're all on the same show. It didn't even work when Nick Goulas used to keep 6 or 7 sets of belts in his fucking drawer and have Night of Champions when he didn't have anything hot going on. So the tag team title match comes up. The New Day and a bunch of midgets come out dressed as pancakes. And so I fast forwarded because I needed to catch up some time, because if they ain't going to take it seriously, I ain't either. So whoever was in that match, I don't give a fuck. Then here comes John Cena out to apparently fight The Undertaker, but then here comes Elias, and it was awkward, and it took a while, and if they needed to save some time, I don't know why they didn't save some here, and finally John gets to beat up Elias, but then there is a blackout, and then lightning hits Taker's hat in the ring, and Taker really comes out, and he still got the best entrance in the world. And they had the short match, and John did the favors. And that's exactly what it should have been. It obviously wasn't, it couldn't be, I guess, for various physical reasons or whatever, and father time. It couldn't be a classic match on WrestleMania, but it was great to see The Undertaker, and John didn't give a shit for putting him over. And if this is his last one, at least he beat, in his last WrestleMania, the record book is he beat a major superstar, John Cena. So Taker wins the match and all is good, but they could have actually eliminated the whole thing with Elias, in my opinion, because John didn't need to beat up somebody to get over or stay over when he was about to do the job. I don't know what the real thinking was there. And I don't think people would have felt shorted seeing too little Cena if he'd only had the match with The Undertaker. They introduced the Hall of Fame inductifiers. And this attracted Stacy's attention. So she's got like a cup of fucking hummus or whatever, right? And so she sits down on the couch and says, well, I'll watch a couple of minutes of this with you. I said, well, Steen and Generico's match is next. And she got up and said, I'd never mind, and walked out of the room. Okay. Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon versus Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. The package was nice. Sami Zayn can talk. Imagine that. I would have never known that. When he worked for me, he was a Spanish mute. So once again, the fuck? It wasn't difficult. Take fucking mask off and get some kind of name and get the power of speech if you're going to work for a fucking television company. Anyway, here's what they did. Shane entered, and then they played Daniel's package and Brian's package, and he had a huge entrance, and he was over, obviously, and yes, and the place was rocking, right? And then Steen and Zayn hit the ring from behind and jump him and start a brawl and lay Daniel Bryan out at ringside with double team move and the power bomb on the apron, right, and all that shit. And the medical crew comes over to check on him and everything comes to a standstill. And then Shane decides to go on 2 versus 1. And Shane can't punch, but his other shit's pretty good. It's probably all stiff because I know when he just hugs you, when he likes you, what it feels like. Then they get heat on Shane. And while they're apparently Daniel Bryan is going to be taken back to the hospital by the medical crew, and Shane is fearless and crazy and still staying alive in this thing. But finally, he's incapacitated, and Daniel Bryan comes in for a save, and the crowd wakes up, and then he gets the fucking hot tag, and here we go. And finally, Daniel Bryan taps Sami Zayn. I wanted to like this, and it wasn't because of Steen and Generico either. They just had Shane, and I like Shane, and I like Bryan Danielson. Shane's sister just had the perfectly set up match, and this one goes for the stinker of a setup of a match. How can they fuck up this return? This is how they did it. There was no need to fucking milk us further that Daniel Bryan was not going to be able to return to the ring. We've been milked for 2 fucking years, right? Think about this. And I know that they wanted to have Daniel Bryan make his big entrance and get the yes stuff going and get the dome rocking and everything, and they didn't want to spoil that, but they had the heels jump the baby faces from behind when the heels were the ones that were the wronged parties and should have been hitting the ring hot, correct? Because the heels got the last word on the baby faces, didn't they?
They did.
All right. So then let the heels go to the fucking ring. And let them cut a promo again, fucking get the people riled up, and let Shane come out on the stage and say, well, I'm sorry, but I have to inform everybody that there's due to medical reasons, there's going to have to be a substitution in this match. And Shane's dressed to wrestle, and there's no Daniel Bryan anywhere. And people go, what the fuck? You got to, and that's when Steen and Generico can fucking say, hey, we knew the guy was a coward or whatever. And Shane can say, no, I wasn't talking about him. I was talking about because of my hernia and my Zabada. The doctor said I'm not allowed to wrestle, but that guy behind you is going to kick your ass, because right then here comes Daniel Bryan from behind, and people see him right there. And he starts beating the piss out of fucking Steen and Generico 2 against 1. The place blows. And he does his drop kicks in the corner. And he throws one out on the floor, and he does a dive. And he gets back in the ring, and he does a fancy fucking Zabada with the other. And they're taking bumps like goddamn crazy. And he makes that extended comeback, and Shane McMahon just sits down at ringside to watch that. It's 2 against 1, and the match is going. And then the fucking referee settles it down to 1 in, 1 out. And he can do a spot with fucking Steen and a spot with fucking Generico. And in the middle of them, he can fire the people up, and he can look out at the fucking crowd, and they're going to be going berserk, right? There's your sea of yes, yes, yes. He foils their double team move. Go back to the fucking Night of Legends when the Heavenly Bodies worked with Lance Storm because Jericho had a broken arm. That match where he kicked shit out of them. Both of them for like 5 minutes. And then they cut Daniel Bryan off because you had to watch Shane selling. Owens and Zayn could have had a better match, but Shane's a green seller. The crowd died when Daniel Bryan was out on the floor, and they knew he was coming back eventually, and that's what they were waiting on. So it was dead for that point until he got back into it. This way the people would have been into it from the start. Then they double team fucking Daniel Bryan, and they get him down. And they're beating the piss out of him. And maybe they start giving him fucking shit on his head where they're trying to give him more concussions and put him out. And Shane can't take it. And finally, Shane jumps up on the apron where he's trying to take the tag. Tag me, Bryan. And now Bryan's fighting to tag Shane. But the heels don't want him to. But finally he does, and then Shane makes his comeback and does all his shit, does the coast-to-coast shit, does all that shit, but in the process, the coast-to-coast, he hurts himself. And now they have to dust up Shane for a second, trying to beat him while Daniel Bryan's recuperating on the apron, but now will Shane be able to make the tag? And then finally, Shane somehow makes the fucking tag, and Daniel Bryan fucking dispatches everybody, dumps fucking Owens over the top rope, and taps Zayn out just like he did. And then you've got your fucking yes, yes celebration. And the roof would have come off the fucking place. Just in my opinion. But I don't know why they did what they did. Why did they do what they did?
I can't explain it. What you just came up with was pretty good, but I can't explain it.
Damn it, ain't that difficult?
I will say, I think, I'm about to say Steen, Owens and Generico. Owens and Zayn together as heels are actually really good.
Well, yes, I'm sure they are, and that's the thing. I never said they couldn't work. They're just fucking pains in the ass. But in this case, I didn't like the way it went. And then we followed that up with Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax, right? Nia. Okay, Nia. Mickie James comes out with Alexa Bliss, and she looks not only better than Bliss, but looks like she kicked Bliss's ass. But once again, here's the problem. Now, at least in the previous matches, I knew who the baby faces were, right, and who the heels were. How is the girl the baby face that's 3 times the size of the girl that's the heel?
Did you see the package before the match?
No, actually, because I was late, so I was zipping.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. Nia and Alexa, they used to be friends. And, it was that kind of friendship where they say they love each other. Or at least one of them meant it, and the other one was actually an evil, manipulative bitch, it turns out. And that was Alexa Bliss, who was caught on camera with her buddy Mickie James in the locker room, talking about how big Nia was and how dumb Nia was. And Nia, she is a big girl, but she's also very sensitive, and she was not happy about that, and this was her revenge.
All right, well, I skipped through most of this because I got to be honest. I'm sorry, but after Charlotte and Asuka, I didn't think they were going to top it. Samoan drop-off second rope and a pinfall. AJ versus Nakamura package. Once again, I don't know that I was overly thrilled by the packages. I don't know this time. They've changed flavors or writers or whatever. But Alice Cooper's guitarist was great. Nakamura's entrance was great. Actually, that's the other thing besides Sam Roberts just being flummoxed on live TV. Nakamura's entrance was the other thing. If I hadn't deleted, I was going to go back and watch again. That fucking guitarist is hot in more ways than one, but you want to look at Nakamura. He's acting fucking goofy, but you want to look at him. It's one of those things. And poor old AJ, he should have just fucking come out in a golf cart after that. It was just, he should have just Doug Dillinger fucking driving him in a golf cart. Out on the grass with the fucking. Oh, God. And AJ's music is horrible. What the fuck is that? That is the worst goddamn rotten fucking music for AJ Styles I've ever heard. And I'm a fan of his. There was some different ring announcer that announced this and the other one. Here's a championship match. And once again, there was great wrestling. And this was the best technical work on the show so far. Selling, reacting, stiff, not too smooth, struggling for things. There was no heel here, but if I hadn't seen a bunch of other matches where there was no heel, then I was fine with it because this was for the world title and this means something, and both guys have their proponents and etc. But I didn't write a bunch of notes down because I thought it was once again best technical work so far, great match. I thought the Styles Clash came a little bit out of nowhere, but seeing what was happening next, that was what was needed. And they hug and kiss, which I'm so overseeing, and then here comes the fucking ball shot. Boom, and kicked the shit out of AJ and got some heat, and I loved that. So once again, here was a serious pro wrestling match with nobody fucking jacking around and not even winking at the audience through the whole thing. And Charlotte and Asuka was the same thing, and really so was Triple H and Stephanie and Angle and Rousey. Great pro wrestling matches of different genres of pro wrestling, but nothing that was insulting or stupid. But then they'll have guys coming out dressed as fucking pancakes and bullshit, right? And then here comes, of course, they follow AJ and Nakamura with, and this was a chance for everybody to take a shit, and I hope they did. Braun Strowman does a lousy promo that takes forever, finding his way through the building and picking a fucking kid who I thought was a little girl, to be quite honest, until we were he was identified as little Nicholas, who was 10 years old. And he's the tag team partner against Cesaro and Sheamus. So it's the same. You've taken your monster and made him look like a goddamn complete idiot. You've buried your fucking tag team champions, Sheamus and Cesaro, because they got beat by Sheamus used to be a top guy, right? Somehow.
Oh yeah.
So basically, I fucking watched a little bit of this till I realized that they were really going to do this, and then I wanted to turn it off completely. But I knew there was only one more match to go, and I thought I'll never revisit this again. So I just zipped through the whole thing. But they won the fucking belts, Braun Strowman and the Kid, which then, of course, I guess they relinquished the next day on Raw. And it's, but what the fuck? Seriously. And there are people who will be in this business who never get to wrestle at wrestling. And I know people, he put a smile on the child's face. And it was a ringer kid anyway. It was a referee's son.
Yeah, use the kid who went into the Hall of Fame or something. At least that kid got a babyface pop.
There could have been an asterisk if he'd have brought that fucking little Jarius kid out, because that kid was fucking great. I saw him dancing and hopping around and cutting the promo. This could have gotten an asterisk if there was going to be a kid in a match that nobody touched. If he'd have brought him out, it would have worked for me, maybe. And then it could have been the guy was a big fucking monster and beat the other two. But just out of the crowd, what the fuck? How meaningless can you make this shit look? And then we come back to, once again, another mentally fucking schizophrenic. Here comes Roman and Brock for another championship. Did I mention I hate female ring announcers? That's, thank God, Heyman introduced Brock. We've said it before. There's a reason why that Brock Lesnar is the biggest draw in pay-per-view or now network, whatever the fuck. He's the biggest draw, and they pay him the most money for the least work because he's the one guy that people will still believe might possibly just go into business for himself and fuck somebody up or do shit he's not supposed to do, because almost everybody at this point knows he really doesn't care. He doesn't love this. He only does it for the money. He's got a fucking manager that goddamn probably doesn't really love it. I'm sure he loves it more than Brock, but he does this for the money. I'm pretty sure Heyman does. And he's liable to do anything at any time. So you can believe these fucking guys. And he's a fucking beast, and he's stiff, and he smashes the fuck out of you, and he has his own kind of Brock Lesnar match. He is Dick the Bruiser in the mid to late 50s and early 60s. That's the aura he has and the look he has, and the fact that he's dangerous and a riot could start at any minute. And Bruiser, went to jail for beating up the cops at the matches. So of course anything could happen, and this was all real and people knew it. So he's a modern day Dick the Bruiser. They can believe him, and a lot of his stuff looks brutal, because it is, I'm sure. And Roman Reigns hung with him work-wise, and actually I didn't see anything wrong with Roman Reigns' work or his look. It's just the people hate him because of the reasons we've discussed. They figured out that the McMahons wanted him to be the guy without consulting with them. The fans, that is. But they were doing what and I thought we all thought we knew the finish. And right as I had written down, goddamn, they needed blood here, because I figured they were going to beat this guy insensible, and then finally when he won it, people would have to admire the effort that he went through, that he walked through hell with gasoline britches on, right? And right as I said, goddamn, they needed blood here. There's the spear over the desk and the fucking blah, 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 and then the juice, and just beat the piss out of him. I don't know whether I agree with the 6 different F5s, because to be honest, the F5 is not the best looking finish I even saw that fucking night. But I don't know if I agree with 5 or 6 of the F5s or whatever, him kicking out. I was almost a little anticlimactic. He could have kicked out of another couple of big things and whatever. But the point is, it was done to set up like that fucking Reigns was going to, survive hell and then win it. And he made an admirable fucking comeback there. But then when Brock caught him, boom, I was like, well, that changed. But that was possibly I know they were stuck here. And once again, the heel is the more popular guy. The baby face is the guy they boo out of the buildings. The only guy they can believe is real or could be real is Brock, and that's why they cheer him. And the guy they want to cheer, or they want the fans to cheer, has been picked by the bosses to be the guy, and the fans know this is why they won't cheer him, even though he's a great wrestler and he did shit fine. So I don't know how you could have got out of this, but that was the flattest WrestleMania ending in recorded history. Boom. 1, 2, 3. Well, fuck you. You thought you knew what was going to happen, and off we go. And everybody's like, huh? Because now what? And they had teased and Dana White being there, and they teased Brock was going back to the UFC, and that was good for what it was, but there's a reason why that WrestleMania has almost always had a happy ending, and that's because that's the flattest ending of WrestleMania I've ever fucking seen.
Yeah, I think you were wrong about something. You compared Brock to mid-'60s Dick the Bruiser. I think, unfortunately, it's more like late 70s Dick the Bruiser now, because Brock and Heyman, and I can't think of a worse fate for Heyman, have both just become boring, quite frankly. It's the same match. It's just suplex after suplex. He doesn't look like he wants to be there. Heyman seemingly does the same promo now every time I see him. They've become boring.
Yeah, well, and on the time frame, mid-'60s maybe, because in the terms of Brock is still athletic and still moves around and throws people around and looks, he's not like just moving like a fucking senior citizen. But he ain't doing a lot of different shit. But then again, I don't even, if that's the Brock Lesnar match and that works for most people, and it works most of the time, and they don't see him enough to get sick of it, really. But he needs to have somebody that either is going to be a mega baby face against him, or somebody that he can be a mega baby face against. And with Heyman, once again, the people that are going to be stirred up, nobody's going to be stirred up by Heyman to want to assault him physically or get real old school heat, as they say. So Heyman, except that he's in the contract and Brock just likes to have him around because he can take up some of the talking work, Heyman should be with a young guy if they're going to use him for very much longer to help get the young guy over. Because they can't really boo Brock with Heyman with him, because most of the audience really is going to like Heyman because he's great at what he fucking does when he's motivated. It's a psychological, I don't know what the fuck, but now who's the fucking guy? Have we got any idea?
No. Did you watch any of Raw the next night?
No, Jesus Christ, no, for God's sake. I was already trying to adhere to my low-carb diet, so the last thing I would do was watch more.
What do you think of Bobby Lashley coming back, though?
Well, I heard about it, and I'm happy because he's a great guy, and he's a great employee and a great guy to have in the locker room, and he's an imposing fucking figure, and I bet they could probably have some good matches, he and Brock, or a good match as often as Brock works, but Bobby Lashley is not going to be the guy either. At this point, they're just due to age and starting, from scratch again. Let me see who on this show.
Yeah, who did you see?
I'm just going to go back and look through.
That you would make the guy.
I'm not going to say in any order. I'm going to go through and mention people that would be in my fucking talent pool. Seth Rollins. Not any of the ladies are a separate category. Seth Rollins, Bobby Roode, Randy Orton. Can't say Kurt Angle, can't say Triple H, but they were in the best match.
They should run with the women's division. That's where it is right now.
I mean, you didn't get a good Daniel Bryan. We don't know where he's at, and we didn't get a good look at Owens and Zayn. But I don't think Zayn's not going to be the guy. Daniel Bryan could be if he fucking fulfills a full schedule. The jury's out on Owens as being he's not going to be the baby face. AJ Nakamura's a heel now. He's not going to be the guy.
By the way, both guys older, not younger guys there.
Well, I was about to say, and AJ's almost 40. AJ's not going to be in the future the guy in the WWF. Strowman just won the fucking tag titles with a fucking kid as his partner. So even though he beat two guys that traditionally would get a guy over strong, it was in a stupid, goofy, phony match which made people groan. Well, there you go. Holy shit.
The women's division, man, that's where it's at. You have Charlotte Flair. Who's the woman going to be? You have Charlotte Flair.
I'm just flabbergasted. If this was the biggest show of the year and they seemed that there was 1 million people on it, and when you take Roman Reigns out of the equation and say who's going to be the guy next, and we can't go much farther than those people that should be that would be in the top mix, in my opinion.
Well, let me ask you this: based on what you saw,
not to be the guy, but he deserves to be one of them.
Based on what you saw, because I'm sure a lot of the listeners will be screaming this. What about Gargano?
Oh, Jesus Christ! No, he ain't ready for that. Get him a fucking mirror, and like Tojo Yamamoto used to do, Jarrett or Bobby Eaton. He'd turn the fucking rearview mirror in the car while the guy was driving and he was in the passenger seat, and he would fucking take his fingernail of his thumb and his forefinger and dig his fingernail as hard as he could into the fucking guy's earlobe. And he'd say, "See your face? Now you make that face when I don't squeeze." Get him some fucking mirrors. No, Gargano can't be the guy at this point or in the near future. Over any of the names that I just spoke about, I don't think so. Ciampa would be closer to being the fucking guy than Gargano, and I don't think he's there. It's that's I guess now we know why every time they bring a legend back, he generally kicks the shit these days, kicks the shit out of the new guys, is because they're still better. If we've established that the champion can be part-time, I'd go Angle and Lesnar. And where's Samoa Joe?
He was on Raw the next night. He had a confrontation with Roman Reigns.
Okay. At least he's still around. Well, there you go. Samoa Joe, there's a fucking guy. Kurt Angle. Cinderella story out of nowhere. If Brock got his fucking panties in a wad or as a transition or whatever the fuck, who knows? But there's not and Samoa Joe's not a spring chicken either, but he's still got some gas left in the tank. So I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, there it is, the post-John Cena world of wrestling as heard on the Jim Cornette Experience.
And I mean, do you see what I'm saying? And I may be biased, but a lot of this is valid critique. It was schizophrenic show. There were some things that belonged and some things that didn't. And it could have been shorter and edited out the needless misery and concentrated on the good shit, and it probably made the same amount of money. But a lot of, I think it's basically the lesson we've learned is to get over, guys, you have to stop worrying about a smooth choreographed gymnastics routine and worry more about trying to make it look like a struggle, picking your spots, and also recognizing that some people have the size and the physical charisma to be viewed as a top guy by not only the people in the office, but the people in the stands. And some people need to be the fucking best friend in the movie.
Yeah, and WrestleMania was a lot better when it was 3 hours. Because honestly, yes. I was done after the Rousey match. That was a perfect match. I was really done there. I was exhausted sitting on my couch watching. Imagine being in that building, how exhausted you were after that match and for the rest of the evening. And that's why the crowd died down the rest of the show.
And once again, and Daniel Bryan being in the middle, that's this whole idea of spacing things out, okay, we'll have a big match, we'll give them a breather and blah, blah, blah. It's a modern era thing. I was always taught the shows that I attended for the most part and the shows that I tried to book built from the start to the finish. At least that's the way they were intended. And some of my middles were hot and some of my ends were hot and some of my in between that sometimes let me down. But I always tried to build the fucking show from start to finish, and this was up and down like a fucking Trump stock market report. So I don't know. It wasn't as enjoyable as if I'd have, when you've already had, imagine you have the greatest sex of your life, and then she tries to get you interested again, and you manage to pull it off a second time, but then she tries to get you interested, and by the end of the night, you're like, I actually just wish we could all go home or have something to eat. So all right. Anyway.
So the best thing you saw, obviously, all weekend was the Rousey match. What was the worst thing you saw?
Well, I mean, it worse in what way? The tag team match with the Kid as partner was stupid and was a death slot to begin with, but at the same time, out of the women's battle royal was just some phony fucking bullshit looking wrestling, because a lot of those girls didn't look like they had very much experience in battle royals, and they were just standing around. It just depended on what, but it wasn't a shining moment. And I would have rather seen a lot of the talent in the multi-person matches, in single matches, and eliminate a couple of those people rather than, because once again, I know they're trying to get everybody on the show, but everybody can't be on Broadway either. I don't know what to say. But that's about it.
It certainly is.
And at least Nakamura gets how to turn heel too, boy. I enjoy it. It's almost like they were going every other thing I would enjoy, and every other thing I'd try to turn the show off.
But, see, there's a cool story there, too, because if you remember the Royal Rumble, Asuka won the Women's Royal Rumble, and Nakamura won the Men's Royal Rumble. So here they are, the two Japanese competitors, both going to WrestleMania to get world title shots. Asuka loses, has that embrace with Charlotte afterwards, gives her the hug. So here's Nakamura, who also loses. So now they both win the Royal Rumble. They both lose the championship match. Nakamura goes for the hug. Nakamura turns on him.
Yeah. The whole thing was nice. And that's once again, and if I was some of the talent, I would be a little bit more willing to say, hey, no, hold on here a second, when they try to put me in with the fucking people dressed like pancakes and shit. Because the matches that get over, the matches that people talk about, the matches that fucking people remember are the serious matches that were fucking done well, and not the silliness that just stuck people on the show. So, I don't know. That's just my opinions. I'm going to burn this notepad immediately after the fucking show.
Do you think it's fair to say that the Triple H, Stephanie versus Angle Rousey match is one of the all-time great WrestleMania matches?
It's got to be. Because once again, it's not about how many fucking suplexes they did off onto the concrete floor. It's about execution and whether the people wanted to fucking see it, and timing. And it had everything that a pro wrestling match should have. Everybody did exactly what they should have done in exactly the perfect way, and with a timing where nothing got old and nothing was really telegraphed too much. And people popped on everything, and they were with it from beginning to end. It was a perfect pro wrestling match. And that's why I always would tell guys at tryouts, or that we're trying to do dark matches, I don't want a degree of difficulty of fucking 10 and an execution of 5. Flip it the other way around. I want the degree of difficulty of 5, but I want an execution of 10. Flawless, as good as you can get. That gets the people. Don't run off and leave them, and don't lay there until you lose them. And that's hard to do. So when people try to do the 10 and the 10, that's when they really fuck up. And that's when they have these goddamn messes that Gargano and Ciampa did, which we know they can work, those guys. And they had a great tag team match with fucking Revival, because they didn't do every goddamn thing in the world. This was not Flair and Steamboat. This was way beyond Flair and Steamboat as far as trying to do everything that's ever been done. And it was multiple kinds of matches and throwing in too much excess drama and blah, blah, blah. And as you can tell, I've got a sore throat talking about it. But when something is done that well and that kind of timing, that's when it keeps the people all the way through, that when it gets the big pop at the end, and that's when the people remember it. And, once again, it's nice when the people are standing on their feet when you come out, because they want to see it already. They're more likely to like what you do. But as Dennis Connery used to teach us, me and Bobby Eaton, when we first went to Louisiana, we don't care what they're fucking doing when we go out, as long as they're standing up when we leave. And a lot of people either wear out their welcome or front load their shit to where you really can't, once again, you can't milk them from flaccid, from completely limp. There needs to be a tickle of the taint. And a little blood starts going to it, and then the little tickling of the nipples, and the whatever, and then finally the big one, and then finally the boom, and there you go. And then you don't want to go back and start tickling the taint. You want to go get a sandwich.
Every match can't be a 2-minute hooker blowjob in an alley.
Exactly. Only the lucky ones. All right, with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's just leave now. We'll just walk out, and hopefully no one will notice that we have left. Ladies and gentlemen, until next week. Well, you can listen to the drive-through until next week, because the drive-through will be out on Monday.
Yes.
Go to YouTube and listen to plenty of stuff in between times, and we will see you back here next week on The Experience. For Brian and the whole cast of WrestleMania, ladies and gentlemen, including the 87 announcers, I'm Jim Cornette for the Jim Cornette Experience. Thank you, fuck you, and bye-bye, WrestleMania.